So we're saying, right? You guys see this? Cool. Don't do that. Right?
Just for treating women right, Joe. Pussy.
You should just treat men right. You know what I mean?
Why? What?
If I'm lying, man. If she's on the streets, nah. If you're from the streets,
I knew it.
This your
like she
bad.
you can take this, man. But she ain't making like, I ain't gotta take this shit from you.
Unpopular opinion.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Unpopular Opinions Podcast. I am your host, King Joe.
And I am Nutty, your co-host. Welcome back.
We have an interesting topic today, guys. So we wanted to tackle the topic of toxic masculinity, right? And well, I personally wanted to tackle this topic, and I want to talk about it with you because I feel like we are gearing towards a world now where the traditional traits of just a regular guy is being considered toxic, you know? I mean, like we've gone from a place where like women wanted us to like, you know, do certain things like open the door and, you know, pay for this and do that. Now when we enforce those like certain things, like, oh, you don't think I can, you know, but like I'm always talking about it in a very shallow sense, but these are things that we hear, okay? These are just like generalities. Obviously, there's degrees to the levels of toxicity that we've been referred to, and then there's also versions that are not so toxic. He's just being a guy. So we're gonna talk about that today. But before we begin, I want to ask you just let's talk about masculinity. What is masculinity?
Right.
Like, let's start there. What's masculinity?
So I mean, to a guy, it was always associated with, you know, strength, power, you know, toughness, you know, being a man. And I always say, like, when you say be a man, what is be a man? But the elements, there's certain things that as a man you just have to, you know, do. Like, how you stand out, how you protect, how you around other men, you know, that's the level of aggression, you know, you know, but
so I hate Google. Okay, so first I'm gonna elaborate on what you said, because like for me, masculinity is like you said, the things that make us guys, the things that, you know, like we are confident, we go for one way, aggressive, you know, but not aggressive in a violent manner, but in a way go getter mentality is a masculine trait, you know, and for me, that's masculinity. But like also understanding that in a certain situation, a certain level of behavior will be expected of you that we won't expect from a woman, right? So for example, again, like I like to use our nature to our core. I think it's important for us to always center ourselves around our nature and our core, because then we can learn from the behaviors that come from it, right? And so to our nature, depending on who you are, man or woman, you're gonna react differently based on the situation because your nature will allow for it. So for example, like what I mean by that is like in an environment where it's me and you and the voice, and we're chilling and a fight breaks out, right? And in that fight, they are also attempting to hurt the women, right? We will be expected to do what exactly? If it's not our fight, what will we be expected to do?
Protect.
There you go.
Protect.
Because that's masculinity. Your masculinity is activated, right? Okay, let's take away the violence, okay? Let's say we are at a restaurant, okay? And the ball comes. It's me, you, and the voice, and 3 girls. Our women, your girlfriend, my girlfriend, his girlfriend, right? And the ball comes. What's our masculinity gonna do? The men are gonna talk, right? Because that's our role, right? The masculinity kicks in, okay? Right?
And before even that, when they bring the girl, they don't put it by the woman.
They don't put it by the woman, because they understand that the masculine guy, the masculinity kicks in. Okay, so for me, like masculinity is just it's the characteristics of a male's nature, right? And the definition here that I have on, I Googled it. I Google everything, right? If you don't know something, you must Google, right? You can't just talk. You must Google, right? And it says here, masculinity, right? Is first of all, it's described as a noun or as qualities or attributes regarded as characteristics of men. Handsome, muscled, driven. Those are the things that go into masculinity. But now, when you speak of toxic masculinity is then now defined as a concept used in academic and media discussions. A concept, okay? So for me, and please tell me if you, well, actually, don't agree with me. I actually welcome you not agreeing with me. For me, when someone says something is a concept, it's not real. Okay? Because a concept means that it comes from a form of idealism. Okay? So it's not real, right? Well, we're going to get into that, obviously, right? So it says, a concept used in academic and media discussions on masculinity to refer to certain cultural norms that are associated with harm to society and men themselves. Okay. Now, I've said my piece. I think toxic masculinity as a concept does not exist. Because from what I've seen, okay, and from the conversations I've had with other men, toxic masculinity from the general public, as much as they try and highlight the deepening effects of a violent mindset, what they end up doing is they just translate the scenarios of everyday things. Toxic masculinity being like a man being assertive. Men are assertive, even with each other. It just is how that's how it goes. It's not always to your detriment, but it's because of, how do I say, like at the end of the day, if things come down, they're gonna come down on that person. And that level of responsibility, depending on the man, right? Depending on how much responsibility he's carrying, he's going to be a little bit more assertive than that guy who's not carrying the same level of responsibility. It is what it is. But a guy who finds himself in that situation, in his circumstance, will probably behave the same way. So that's how I see it.
So how I see it from a toxic masculinity is there are elements of it which I agree with it, right? Yeah. Concept is a concept, but the reason I'm gonna give an example here, one of them is, as you say, one of the traits of being masculine is toughness.
Okay.
Right? But the way it becomes a detriment is in situations where we've seen it, especially in not our generation, like generations before us, like our dads, our uncles, and so forth. So they come from a time where, as a man, you must always be tough, you must be strong.
Absolutely.
So when they were sick, sometimes they didn't want to go to the doctor. They just write it out.
Yeah.
They write it out. You'd be like, no, you have to go see a doctor. Like, nah, it's just flu.
Yeah.
Nah, it's just pain. I just gotta lie. That's bad, right? Because one thing about the body doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. If something's wrong with you, it's gonna get you, right?
Facts.
So where the toxic masculinity comes in is that they feel like they need to portray that toughness and not show weakness because it's not their fault entirely, because society has this condition that you always have to be tough, no matter what circumstantial it is. And if you're in pain, don't show that you're in pain.
Okay.
But you should actually say, hey, I'm feeling this. Y'all gotta take you to the hospital right now.
Okay.
You are like sometimes you in pain, like you want to cry, but you can't cry because men don't cry.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
That's your detriment. For me, that's where it's your detriment. That's where it comes in.
Okay.
Right?
Now, here's what I'll say to that, right? I agree to an extent, right? And the extent is that, again, in idealism, what you're saying is correct. But sorry, guys. Because I'm in my throat. Sorry. So the bullshit I'm about to talk. Right? It's ideological to tell men to dive a little bit more into their feelings and show a little bit more. It's very ideological, but when we put that stuff into practice, what's the overall reality or what typically happens, right? I'll give you an example. I don't know if you watched the Joe Rogan podcast. Mm-hmm. So Joe Rogan has a podcast, obviously. He's a MMA commentator. He interviews anybody. And on his podcast came a woman, and yes, I'm just using this as an example. Okay, I'm going to explain why I use that as an example later, right? This woman comes on, right, and she's talking about her MMA boyfriend. She's an MMA fighter too. Okay. And she's talking about her MMA boyfriend, and she's saying that he got rocked, right? And anyone who's ever done combat sports, if you've been rocked, You know when they hit you in the back of the right? So he got robbed and he was falling to the ground. And instead of covering up like this, he was covering up like this. Right? Okay. Now, like I thought back to like when I lost the fight years ago, right? And I lost it like a fucking, BITCH, I lost it like that. And I was like, I took a beating, right? That woman, how did she react? She said that they turned her off. She said she was looking at her man catching hands like that and reacting in the manner that he did, right? Exactly, right? And in the comment section, the guys were saying, the guy got hit, he got robbed. That's a natural reaction of someone who maybe give him constructive criticism and tell him don't cover up like this, cover up like this, because that's what they teach you, right? Don't cover up like that, cover up like this because blah blah blah. That's more. I guess that's also like speaks to at least you're protecting, as opposed to just taking hands. Yeah. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But she was like, his weakness turned her off. You understand? And she was ready to just be like, cheers, bro. Imagine this guy was in a fight, bro, sanctioned. And the comments, men were telling me, bro, this nigga got robbed. What the hell? What are you talking about? This guy got robbed. Yeah. And the bloke was saying, yeah, but I understand. But one thing he said, I watched my man catch hands after we started the fight. And, because when women watch us in our masculinity and our masculinity does not translate into the overall outcome of what they expect it to be, what happens? There you go. So that's why the men would have to, take it, bro. Same thing with my weight and...
Does that mean that toxic masculinity doesn't exist?
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked that question. So the reason why I'm so glad you asked that question, right? I'm so glad, right? Is because I would accept that it exists. If on the opposite end, you can say that toxic femininity exists. Us as men, can we say toxic femininity exists? We can, but is the concept out there? When you Google it, it says toxic femininity, as explored, right, is used as a term that refers to the gender expectations that keep women subservient, quiet, and submissive to men's domination and aggression. Which basically tells you, right, in a sense, toxic femininity does not exist. What this thing is saying is that toxic femininity is predicated on a woman being submissive to her man.
But let me jump in there for a second. You Googled, right? What is Google? And what gives whatever source that is the authority to make such a statement, and that is to be true? Even the other definition of toxic masculinity, who says that's the truth?
Okay.
If it's a concept, whatever the concept is in your mind, whatever the concept is in his mind, whatever the concept is in my mind, that then creates the definition and your outlook on it.
That's a more see. Now that's another again very dangerous. I like the word dangerous because like when you mention danger, people will pay attention to it before they go and approach it. Right? It's a very dangerous way of looking at things because if everything is anecdotal, if everything is predicated on an individual, what's a societal standard? Right? Then there's no societal standard because everything is predicated on an individual. There's no societal standard. But we have created a space where we are saying toxic masculinity does exist. I'm saying it doesn't exist, right? Because, like you said, everything is personal, right? But I'm not using the reason of personalization. I'm using the fact that the concept says that it exists in its generality, right? But then it also says that toxic femininity does not exist. That can't be
so. But let's look at reality. We're talking about reality, right?
Yes.
I mean, so if you're saying it doesn't exist, so are you saying? And this is the question: are you saying if we look at depression, for example, right?
Okay.
And we see a lot of the source of depression, especially for men. We talk about men in general. Is that you can never, if you're in a deep dark place, you can't express it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
because it shows weakness.
Yeah.
Right? You can't. How many times do you say something to somebody, and instead of them giving you like positive advice, they be like, "Come on, man up." You know, right?
Okay.
That's the advice they give you. They don't say, "Okay, look, dude, you can do this." This is like, "Come on, dog, man up."
Okay.
Like, okay, what?
But who's typically saying that? Are men the only one saying?
But here's the thing. That's one. So that's one, right? And two is sometimes a lot of men are afraid to express their emotions because, like I say, it shows to them it shows a sign of weakness, right? It's because you can't be soft. You don't have that. You take away that that toughness that you're supposed to display.
Okay.
But all that does is that you just keep all that stuff inside.
Okay, so-
right? Because society has made it not okay for men to be expressive and emotional. Because let's be honest, women will say, I like the men expressive, whatever, but on the broader sense,
Once they get one,
there is a turn off.
Yeah, of course.
Because you're not strong.
once they get one,
Right? So
different story.
so for guys it's very tough.
Yeah.
Because now, okay, what do I do? Do I actually become expressive? Do I actually how much do I do? 50-50? 60? You can't.
Yes.
And it's also not fair.
Yes.
Right? And then the minute you don't do something, it's toxic masculinity. If you do it, you stop. Like, okay, you can't win.
And that's
I can't win.
That's another reason why. That's actually another reason why I'm of the belief that it doesn't exist. Because if it did exist, we would be able to not have this because that's not masculinity. Like, masculinity is not punishing yourself to the view of others. You're not just saying like not going to the doctor because you don't want to look weak. That's not masculinity. Nothing masculine about that. But masculinity is not enduring. The hardships, argumental. Hang on.
If I can jump
Come
in there.
on, man. I was like, it's crime. Imagine you stopping a man halfway through his run. Like, the nigga's running, he's running. And you're like, hang on.
Before you finish that point, I'll leave you to finish your point. But before you finish that point,
Go on.
you said pretending you're not sick or you're not in pain is not masculinity.
It's not.
Nobody said it's masculinity.
Yeah.
It's toxic masculinity.
No, okay. The reason why I say it's not toxic masculinity because it's not part. It's not part of masculinity to begin with.
No,
There's nothing masculine about pretending tough. Being tough is masculine, but pretending to be tough.
Exactly.
Pretending to be tough is not masculine. So
Exactly.
therefore, it can't be part of. It can't be toxic masculinity.
Being
Because it's not
tough.
masculine.
Being tough
So,
is
do you understand what I'm trying to say?
So-
Wait, do you see where I'm coming
Being
from?
strong is masculine.
Do you see where I'm coming from?
Wait,
Okay, so let's agree. Being strong is masculine, right?
Being strong is masculine.
Okay, cool.
Pretending not to be strong is not masculine.
Pretending to be strong is toxic masculinity.
Okay, now when a woman pretends to be strong, is she portraying toxic masculinity or is she just being strong?
Is being strong
Strong
feminist?
It's not
being
feminist.
strong feminist.
So it's toxic femininity then?
Is being strong feminine?
No.
Then it's not. It can't be toxically feminine. What is something that's feminine?
So remember,
What is some? Let's say the sensuality. Sensuality is feminine, right? But over sexualization, that's toxic
But
femininity.
sexualization and sexuality don't correlate.
Sensuality, being
Okay.
sensual.
Okay.
What is being sensual?
But being said, okay, but see, this is why I say guys, it's very difficult.
okay, so let's
breaking down a breakdown.
Alright, okay.
Breaking down a
Hold on.
breakdown.
Hold on.
Let's go.
No.
There is a standard, guys.
Hear me out. So, I will say this. Toxic masculinity does exist, although I will say it's being used wrongly a lot these days. It's being used to anything that not anything. Let me start saying. There's some things that guys do that are broken when they do them because they have it's either adapting survival or so forth. They're used as to downplay like this toxic masculinity, which is not always the case.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
It's
Yeah,
not always the case.
I agree.
There are elements of it where I agree, and like I said, one example that, dude, if you're sick or if you're in pain, admit that you're in pain. There's nothing wrong with it. But and if you don't, it's your own detriment. Like I said, if you're a runner, we live in a world where if I run the 100 meters and then I pull a hamstring halfway, the right thing to do is for me to sit down because I could make it worse. But we live in a world where if I get up and limp to the finish line, they're gonna clap for
They're
me.
gonna applaud you. That's masculinity.
Because you roll through the pain.
Yes, that's masculinity.
But it's wrong. We should be like, hey, dog, drop. We should not clap for him for doing that. But what does the world do? It's portrayed as that for you doing that, you gotta ride through the pain.
Okay.
That's what a man does.
Do you know why it does that? Because again, and this is what I like, and I'm glad you used that example. Because at the end of the day, we know that the rules of life apply differently to men than they do to women. We know to our core that some way in our lives, right, as a man, you will meet a certain level of hardships that will not be nice, and that will probably not be fortunate for you. I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to fucking ride through that thing. And once you ride through it, on the opposite end is a certain level of personalized glory. Sure, that guy ran, he limped left the finish line, and we clapping. But you know what he gained at the end of it? he gained knowing that the people around him also know that when push comes to shove and he has to finish the job, he will finish the job because that's masculinity. Masculinity is seeing something through, right? Sometimes to your detriment, okay? But once you start using that, once you start using seeing something through to belittle others, to bring other people down, you're not portraying any form of masculinity, you're just portraying types of traits. There's nothing masculine about you using it to be detrimental. There's nothing masculine about a man using his aggression to do something bad. There's nothing masculine about that. There's nothing masculine about being depressed and going around and telling every fucking person about it. There's nothing masculine about that. That's when people look at that and see the weakness. That's why we don't condone it. Because there's nothing masculine about that. What's masculinity? Seeing it through. You're sad or you're depressed about something, trust us. We know. We've been through it. The other day I was somebody. So I did. I spoke to a therapist. You find solutions.
But you see, you did something about it.
Yes,
but if you didn't do something about it, that would have been toxic to you, right?
Yeah, it would have been toxic to me, but it would not have been toxic. It would have not been toxic to my masculinity because that would not have been portraying a masculine trait. But not finding a solution and being in within yourself is not masculine because masculinity is finding a way to push through adversity.
But you see, you're using the term not masculine. And we're simply using the term toxic masculinity. Everything that you're saying to pretend like you're not strong is not masculine. And we're just saying, no, that's toxic masculinity. What is toxic?
No.
What is toxic? Toxic is something that's poisonous, that's detrimental
to you.
That's all it is. Yes, you're showing your masculinity. I'm strong.
Well,
but if the strength of yours is detrimental to you, it's being toxic. Or if it's detrimental to the people around you, you're being toxic.
You're being toxic, but you're not portraying any sign of masculinity. Therefore, it comes to masculinity because it's not masculine. Just like if being strong, right, is not feminine. A woman who is aggressive cannot be said to be showing toxic femininity because she's not showing a feminine trait. She's showing a nigger trait.
So we're not gonna agree here. We're not gonna agree, right?
Okay, I want to make another point. Right? Masculinity and femininity is not necessarily male and female.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is more prevalent in male and it can be distinguished. We cannot take that away.
Masculinity, there are masculine traits that you find in women, like strength.
Yes, traits, but it's not an innate part of who they are. Just like being feminine is not an innate part of who a man is.
Being push out an entire human being and you want to tell me that's not strong? How does a woman carry water on her head from one dam?
How does the same species who pushes out an entire population out of the vaginas can't build a fucking city?
Who said this?
Come on! So everything that's ever been built has been built by men, bro.
Why? Is that because they couldn't or because they were told they couldn't?
Because they couldn't. It wasn't when they get put in those kind of situations, they fail every time.
But they don't fail every time.
Oh my God! No way. This guy's not serious. There is no way, guys. There's no way. There's no way this guy's saying
it just doesn't make sense.
This guy's getting away with saying that women can do things the way men can do.
I didn't say women can do things the way men can do them. It's a biological fact that men have more testosterone than women, making them more physically strong.
And therefore, because they have more testosterone than women, certain characteristics of masculinity will be generally more attributed to the male species because the male species will most likely be able to show those characteristics based on their biology.
Here's a perfect example. During the World War, niggas at war, women in the offices, and the world went on. The workplace went on. Factories didn't close down. Who were in those factories?
You don't know in the factories.
Okay, wait. We got. Let's bring it in. So you say toxic masculinity doesn't exist.
I say it doesn't exist in the confines of the way they're describing it
today.
Okay. Those are just detrimental traits because they can be portrayed by both genders. It's not part of masculinity.
I say
women also try to be tough.
There's elements where I agree that that word is being abused, especially when to bring down men.
Yes.
You know, when men voice their opinions to things, when they're like, you're just being toxic. Like they don't give you reason, they just say
they just say you're being toxic.
I agree, it is being used loosely.
And especially when you bring up toxic femininity, they don't have
but I will say it does exist because there are certain elements of it which is true, and it is to a detriment, right? And that's what I'm saying. Talking things like depression, when you're going through pain, certain things that
seek help, guys. You must.
Right? So because of that, it does exist. I just think it's just misaligned these days. That's what I say.
I'll agree to that. I'll agree to that. It's misaligned.
So we need to bring it back to what it really is. But right now, it's a mix. It's a mix. But hey, that's what you guys
Let us know what you think. And let's not equate men and women, bro. We can't equate. In some cases, we are both different for a reason. Being able to push out a human being does not translate to the same strength as a man. That's why they're like, no one's pushing for women to go and be like construction workers. No one's like, you know what we should do? We should get a lot more girls in here to try and help us lift all these stuff. No, they're gonna be like, hey guys, we actually need more gents. Stuff is getting really, really hard. They don't go around saying that. Okay? So like, because they're not saying that, we can't equate. The same way like when it's time to do things that have to do with say emotions and understanding all those things, things like psychology and therapy and stuff. More often than not, they do look for women because to their innate nature, right? They are more equipped to handle a certain thing differently than a man. That just is how it is. I'm sorry, that's just fact. If you don't like it, bruh, I don't know, bruh. Maybe change your sex, maybe change your gender. But knowing that when you do that, if you do eventually change your sex or your gender, there will be certain things that are expected of you, and you might not like them. But you'll have to deal with it. That's where you have to. We can't equate the same. We can't equate men and women. And if we must, then we must be able to say like, if that's detrimental as a man's highest level of toxic behavior, then we should be able to be like do the same for women. But we don't. Therefore, one can't exist without the other. Like if you as a man are born and then you give birth to another like give birth to a man, and they tell you, oh, women exist as well. You'd be like, whoa, there has to be a woman for them to actually exist, right? Exactly. But if you're able to be the only one to be able to do a certain thing, you'd be like, women don't exist. Same thing. If toxic masculinity can be attributed to toxic men or blah, 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 let's also be able to find a way to do the same for women, but we can't. In a society that we live today, you guys find something that we can. And if you can, then drop a comment in the comments below. Drop a comment in the comments below and let's have a conversation about it. Alright? Subscribe to our channel. Okay.
Let us know what you think, yo.
Let us know what you think.
This was a heater one.
If it exists, then let's go, bro. Let's talk about everybody. But guys, you can't just be like, oh no, but then women also are aware. But our rules apply the same. Let us know what you guys think.
Thanks for watching, yo.
Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.